The mining colony on Kepler 442b had been quiet for 3 standard weeks. Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Prometheus stood at the observation deck, watching the purple-tinted sunrise paint the alien landscape in shades of violet and gold. The silence should have been peaceful, but something felt wrong. "Captain, we're picking up distress signals from the northern canyon," Lieutenant Rodriguez called from the communications station. "It's not human. The pattern is unusual." Sarah frowned. The mining operation had strict protocols about avoiding contact with indigenous life forms. Kepler 442b was supposed to be uninhabited according to all surveys. "Put it through the universal translator. Let's see what we can make of it." The bridge filled with haunting sounds, low, melodic wails that seemed to carry the weight of unbearable sorrow. Even through the mechanical translation, the pain was unmistakable. The computer's synthetic voice struggled to interpret the alien language. "Searching, searching. My children, taken, stolen in the dark. Please, anyone, help." The crew exchanged uncomfortable glances. Sarah had commanded deep space missions for 15 years, but she'd never heard anything quite like this. The desperation in those translated words cut through the sterile atmosphere of the bridge like a knife. "Sir, should I report this to Earth Command?" Rodriguez asked, his fingers hovering over the communication console. "Not yet," Sarah said slowly. "First, I want to know what we're dealing with. Run a deep scan of the northern canyon. Look for any signs of life, technology, or recent disturbances." The next few hours revealed a troubling picture. The scanners detected a large cavern system in the canyon walls, with clear signs of recent excavation. Energy signatures suggested advanced technology had been used to cut through solid rock. Most disturbing of all, they found traces of what appeared to be a massive struggle. Dr. Alina Vasquez, the expedition's xenobiologist, studied the scan results with growing concern. "Captain, these energy readings don't match anything in our database. Whatever did this has technology far beyond what we expected to find on this planet." Sarah stared at the holographic display showing the canyon system. "The distress calls, they're coming from inside those caverns." "Yes, ma'am, approximately 2 kilometers down in what appears to be a natural chamber that's been modified." Against standard protocol, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. "Prep a shuttle. Small team only, myself, Dr. Vasquez, and Security Chief Morrison. We're going down there." The flight to the northern canyon took 30 minutes. As they descended between the towering purple stone walls, Sarah could see the scarred rock face where something had torn into the ancient formations. The damage was extensive and recent. They landed on a narrow ledge near the cavern entrance. The air was breathable but thin, requiring oxygen supplements. Dr. Vasquez's scanner chirped constantly as they approached the opening. "Captain, I'm reading complex organic compounds. Definitely alien, but there's something else. The chemical signatures suggest extreme emotional distress. I've never seen anything like it." The cavern entrance was larger than it had appeared from orbit, easily big enough for their shuttle to fly through. Emergency lighting strips had been installed along the walls, clearly not of human origin. The alien technology cast an eerie blue glow that made their shadows dance on the carved stone. As they ventured deeper, the distress calls grew louder and more distinct. The universal translator was learning the language patterns, providing clearer interpretations with each passing minute. "My bobbies, they came in the dark, used fire weapons, took my precious ones. 100 cycles of growth gone. Please, someone. I cannot survive this loss." Sarah's heart clenched. She was a mother herself with 2 children back on Earth. The raw anguish in those words transcended species barriers. Whatever this creature was, it was suffering the loss of its children. They rounded a corner and stopped short. The cavern opened into a vast chamber, easily 100 meters across. Bioluminescent panels on the walls provided soft, natural lighting. The space had clearly been a home furniture designed for a non-human anatomy, artistic sculptures that seemed to shift and flow even in stillness, and in the center, a creature unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. She was magnificent and terrifying at once. Nearly 3 meters tall, with a graceful, elongated form covered in iridescent scales that shifted color with her emotions. 4 arms moved in expressive gestures as she keened her loss. Her face was surprisingly humanoid, but with large, multifaceted eyes that held an intelligence and depth that made Sarah's breath catch. The alien noticed them immediately. Her coloring shifted from the deep blues and purples of grief to the bright yellows and reds of alarm. She reared back, all four arms raised defensively. Unknown beings, you wear the scent of metal and fire. Have you come to take what little remains? Dr. Vasquez stepped forward slowly, her hands raised in a universal gesture of peace. We mean no harm. We heard your calls for help. We want to understand what happened here. The alien's eyes fixed on Sarah with uncomfortable intensity. You lead these others. I can see it in your bearing. Are you the ones who stole my children? No, Sarah said firmly. We're explorers from another world. We only arrived 3 weeks ago. We had no idea anyone lived here. The alien's coloring shifted to confused greens and oranges. Other world? You are not from the metal ships that came in the dark. Sarah's blood ran cold. Metal ships, can you describe them? For the next hour, the alien, who called herself HFY in her musical language, told her story. She was the last of an ancient species that had once flourished on this world. Her kind laid their eggs in sacred chambers deep underground, where they would develop for nearly a full year before hatching. Each clutch was precious, representing not just her offspring but the continuation of her entire species. 3 days ago, ships had arrived, sleek, angular vessels unlike anything in Sarah's experience. The attackers had used advanced energy weapons to break through the protective barriers HFY's ancestors had built around the nursery chambers. They had taken everything, dozens of eggs, representing perhaps the last hope for her species' survival. They spoke among themselves, HFY explained, her coloring now a sickly gray of despair. The translator devices I built long ago could understand fragments. They spoke of specimens and genetic material and the collection. They cared nothing for what they were destroying. Security Chief Morrison had been quietly scanning the chamber with his equipment. Captain, I'm picking up residual energy signatures from the weapons used here. The technology is definitely not human, but it's also not naturally occurring. Someone with access to very advanced equipment did this. Sarah felt a growing anger building in her chest. She'd spent years in space, seen the beauty and wonder of the universe, but she'd also seen its darkness. There were species out there that viewed other forms of life as nothing more than resources to be exploited. HFY, she said carefully, do you know where they might have taken your children? The alien's massive eyes shimmered with what could only be tears. The ships departed toward the star cluster you call. I do not know your words. The bright lights in the southern sky. Dr. Vasquez consulted her star charts. The Centauri system. There are several inhabited worlds there, but most of them are restricted or controlled by various trading cartels. Captain, Morrison said quietly, we can't get involved in alien conflicts. The regulations are clear about first contact situations. Sarah looked at HFY, seeing the profound loss written in every line of her alien form. She thought of her own children, safe in their beds on Earth, and imagined how she would feel if someone stole them away. Some things transcended regulations and protocols. The metal ships, Sarah asked, did you see any markings or symbols? HFY moved to one of the carved walls and touched a section with her lower right hand. The stone began to glow, revealing a three-dimensional projection of the attack. Sarah watched in fascination as the alien technology replayed the tragic events. The ships were indeed sleek and angular, with a predatory design that spoke of function over form. On their hulls, barely visible but clearly present, was a symbol Sarah recognized with growing dread, the twisted spiral of the Hegemony Collective. Oh hell, Morrison muttered, the slavers. Dr. Vasquez paled. Captain, if the Hegemony has those eggs. Sarah didn't need her to finish the sentence. The Hegemony Collective was a loose alliance of the worst species in known space slavers, genetic pirates, and worse. They operated outside civilized space, preying on developing worlds and isolated colonies. If they had HFY's children, those eggs would be sold to the highest bidder, probably to be used in illegal genetic experiments. HFY, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her mind, would you be willing to trust us, to let us try to help you get your children back? The alien's coloring shifted through a rapid spectrum of emotions: hope, fear, desperate longing. You would do this? But why? My kind has nothing to offer yours. Sarah smiled, the expression translating clearly despite the species barrier. Where I come from, we believe that protecting children is everyone's responsibility. Your bobbies deserve the chance to live and grow, just like any children anywhere. But the danger, ZHTI began, will be considerable, Sarah admitted. The hegemony doesn't give up their prizes easily, but you shouldn't have to face this alone. For the first time since they'd entered the chamber, ZHTI's coloring shifted toward the warm golds and soft blues of hope. In my language, there is a word Kethara. It means one who stands with you in the darkness, even when wisdom says to run. I have lived alone for so long, I thought such beings were only legends. Well, you're about to meet 3 very real ones, Sarah said with determination. But we'll need your help, your knowledge of their technology, their methods, anything you can tell us about how they operate. Over the next several hours, they planned. ZHTI's technology was far more advanced than human science in many ways. Her people had mastered biotechnology and energy manipulation in ways that seemed almost magical. More importantly, she had been studying the galaxy for centuries, gathering information about the various species and their capabilities. The hegemony, she explained, operated from mobile bases, massive ships that could strip mine worlds and process their findings before moving on. They rarely stayed in one system for more than a few weeks, but they followed predictable patterns based on resource availability and the presence of exploitable populations. Your human colonies, ZHTI said, her coloring shifting to warning oranges, they are at great risk. The hegemony has been watching your expansion. They consider humans to be promising livestock. Sarah felt her blood run cold. Livestock. Your adaptability, your genetic diversity, your capacity for reproduction in various environments, all highly valued in their markets. The implications were staggering. If the hegemony was targeting human colonies, then this rescue mission had just become something much larger. They weren't just saving ZHTI's children. They might be preventing a catastrophe for all of humanity. We need to contact Earth Command, Morrison said, but Sarah shook her head. Not yet. If we go through official channels, this will get buried in committees and bureaucracy. Those eggs will be long gone by the time anyone acts. We do this ourselves first, then report our findings. Dr. Vasquez looked nervous but determined. What about our mining operation, our crew? We evacuate them, send them back to Earth with a full report. But we go after the hegemony with just the Prometheus and whoever volunteers to stay. ZHTI studied Sarah with her large, multifaceted eyes. You risk much for children you will never know. This is not common among the species I have encountered. Sarah thought of her own children again, but also of every child everywhere who deserved the chance to grow up free from fear and exploitation. Maybe it should be more common. As they prepared to leave the cavern, ZHTI moved to a hidden alcove and retrieved several objects, biotechnological devices that pulsed with inner light. These are gene locks, she explained. They will ensure my children recognize their true mother when we find them. No matter what the hegemony does to them, they will know they belong with me. The simple trust in those words, when we find them, not if, filled Sarah with a fierce determination. They would find those children and they would bring them home. The flight back to the mining colony was quiet, each of them lost in thought about the magnitude of what they were undertaking. Sarah's mind raced through tactical scenarios, resource allocations, and the 100 different ways their mission could go wrong. But overriding all of her doubts was the memory of ZHTI's grief and the knowledge that somewhere in the dark between the stars, children were being held captive by monsters. As a human being, as a mother, and as a captain sworn to protect the innocent, she had no choice but to try. The real question wasn't whether they would attempt the rescue. It was whether they would survive it. The evacuation of Mining Station Echo 7 took 12 hours. Captain Sarah Chen watched from the bridge as the last civilian transport ship jumped to FTL, carrying 43 miners and support staff back to the safety of Earth's outer territories. What remained was her crew aboard the UES Prometheus, and they had volunteered to a person. Captain, I've finished analyzing the biotech samples ZHTI provided, Dr. Vasquez reported from the science station. This technology is incredible. These gene locks aren't just identification devices, they're complete genetic profiles of her children. If we can integrate this with our sensors, we might be able to track the eggs even at long range. Sarah nodded, studying the holographic display showing their planned route to the Centauri system. How long to modify our scanners? 6 hours, maybe 8, but Captain, there's something else. These genetic patterns, they're not just complex, they're elegant. ZH-Ty's species has evolved capabilities we can barely comprehend. Enhanced telepathy, bioelectric manipulation, even what appears to be limited precognitive abilities. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his console. No wonder the hegemony wanted them. A species like that would be incredibly valuable to genetic pirates. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. In the past day, she'd learned more about the darker corners of galactic civilization than she'd wanted to know. The Hegemony Collective wasn't just criminal organization. It was a cancer that fed on the suffering of developing species. Captain, Security Chief Morrison called from the tactical station. ZH-Ty is requesting permission to come aboard. She says she has something to show us. 20 minutes later, ZH-Ty stood in the ship's main hangar, her impressive form slightly hunched to fit through the human-sized doorways. Her coloring was a determined blue-green, and she carried what appeared to be a living plant in a translucent container. "I have brought gifts," she announced in her musical voice. "Your ship is well made, but it was not designed for the hunt we undertake. This will help." She set the container on a maintenance table and touched its surface. The plant inside began to glow with soft bioluminescence. "This is a nerve root from my world's deep places. It can interface with your ship's systems, enhance your sensors and defensive capabilities." Dr. Vasquez approached cautiously. "How does it work?" "It learns," ZH-Ty explained. "Feed it energy, show it what you need, and it will adapt your technology to serve that purpose. My people used such symbiotic organisms for thousands of years." Chief Engineer Patterson emerged from behind a bulkhead, his coveralls stained with lubricants. "Ma'am, with respect, I'm not comfortable with unknown alien organisms interfacing with our ship systems. What if it takes control? What if it damages something critical?" ZH-Ty's coloring shifted to understanding purples. "Your caution is wise, but observe." She placed one of her 4 hands on the container. The plant's glow intensified, and suddenly the hangar's lighting improved dramatically. Colors became more vibrant, shadows less harsh. "It enhances, it does not replace. Your technology remains your own." Sarah studied the alien carefully. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford in normal circumstances, but these weren't normal circumstances. "What kind of enhancements are we talking about?" "Your sensors will be able to detect genetic signatures across greater distances. Your shields will adapt to energy types they have never encountered. Your weapons—" ZH-Ty paused, her coloring shifting to somber grays. "They will be able to disrupt hegemony biotechnology without harming organic life." The last point caught everyone's attention. Morrison leaned forward. "Explain that." "The hegemony uses hybrid technology, part mechanical, part biological. They grow their weapons and ships as much as they build them. Traditional energy weapons often feed their systems instead of damaging them. But with the nerve root's assistance, your weapons can target the biological components specifically." Patterson scratched his head. "That sounds too good to be true." "Nothing is without cost," ZH-Ty admitted. "The nerve root will need to feed on your ship's energy reserves, and once the integration begins, it cannot be easily undone. Your ship will become something new, still yours, but changed." Sarah considered the options. They were already facing impossible odds against an enemy with superior technology and numbers. Any advantage was worth considering. "How long for the integration?" 12 of your hours, ZH-Ty replied. "During which time your ship will be vulnerable. The systems will need to be shut down in sequence while the nerve root learns their patterns." The bridge was quiet except for the hum of life support systems. Sarah looked at each of her senior staff in turn, reading the mixture of excitement and apprehension in their faces. They were all volunteers, but this decision would affect them all. "Dr. Vasquez, your assessment." The xenobiologist considered carefully. "The potential benefits are enormous. If even half of what ZH-Ty claims is possible, we'll have capabilities no human ship has ever possessed. But Patterson is right. We're talking about fundamentally altering our vessel with technology we don't understand." "Mr. Morrison." The security chief's expression was grim. "Captain, based on what we know about the hegemony, we need every advantage we can get. Our standard weapons and defenses won't be enough." Sarah turned to Patterson. "Chief." The engineer sighed heavily. "Ma'am, the Prometheus is a good ship, but she wasn't built for combat against unknowns. If this nerve root can give us an edge, well, I've seen stranger things work in my 30 years of service." Lieutenant Rodriguez. The communications officer was young, barely out of the academy, but his voice was steady. Captain, I've been monitoring hegemony communications patterns since yesterday. They're not just raiders, they're systematic exterminators. If we don't stop them here, they'll move on to human colonies. My family lives on Proxima Station. Sarah nodded slowly. The decision was really no decision at all. ZHTI, we accept your gift, but I want Dr. Vasquez monitoring every stage of the process. At the first sign of anything going wrong, we abort. Understood, ZHTI replied, her coloring shifting to warm golds. I will remain aboard to guide the process. There are subtleties that cannot be explained, only experienced. The next 12 hours were the longest of Sarah's career. They watched their ship transform from the inside out as the nerve root's tendrils spread through the hull like a circulatory system. The bioluminescent network pulsed gently, interfacing with every major system aboard the ship. Patterson monitored the process from engineering, his voice tight with controlled anxiety. Captain, the nerve root is interfacing with our power grid. Energy output is increasing by 15% across all systems. Any signs of loss of control? Sarah asked. Negative. If anything, our systems are running more efficiently. The biological components seem to be optimizing our technology. Dr. Vasquez called from the science lab. Captain, you need to see this. The nerve root has enhanced our medical bay. We now have diagnostic capabilities I've never seen before. It can analyze alien physiology at the molecular level. Hour by hour, the reports came in. The weapon systems now generated coherent energy that could disrupt biological components while leaving mechanical systems intact. The shields had become adaptive, capable of adjusting their frequency to counter different energy types. Most importantly, the sensors now had range and resolution that bordered on impossible. Captain, Rodriguez called excitedly, I'm detecting energy signatures consistent with hegemony technology. Distance. Wait, that can't be right. The computer says 47 light years. ZHTI looked up from where she had been communing with the nerve root through direct contact. That is correct. Your sensors can now detect genetic patterns across vast distances. My children's signatures are unique. We should be able to follow their trail wherever the hegemony has taken them. Sarah felt her heart race. Can you pinpoint their location? Not yet, we must get closer. But the trail is clear. They have taken my children to the Proxima Centauri system. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah. Rodriguez's family lived in that system, and now they were heading directly toward what might become a major conflict zone. But they had committed to this path, and children's lives hung in the balance. Mr. Patterson, prepare for FTL jump. Destination, Proxima Centauri Outer System approach. Aye, Captain. The nerve root integration has actually improved our FTL efficiency by 23%. We'll make better time than originally calculated. As the ship prepared for the jump to FTL, Sarah found herself standing next to ZHTI in the observation lounge. The alien's massive form was perfectly still, but her coloring shifted constantly through subtle emotional patterns. You're afraid, Sarah observed. I am terrified, ZHTI admitted. For 40 years, I have lived with the knowledge that I am the last of my kind. My children represent not just my family, but the entire future of my species, if we fail. We won't fail, Sarah said with more confidence than she felt. But I have to ask, if your species was dying out, why did you choose to lay eggs? Why bring children into such an uncertain world? ZHTI's coloring shifted to soft, warm hues. Because hope is not about certainty. It is about believing that love and determination can overcome impossible odds. My children deserve the chance to exist, to discover what they might become. Sarah nodded, thinking of her own children back on Earth. That's very human of you. Perhaps, ZHTI replied, some truths are universal. The jump to FTL was smoother than anything Sarah had experienced. The nerve root integration had transformed their ship in ways both subtle and profound. The crew worked with increased efficiency, almost as if the biological systems were anticipating their needs. Captain, Dr. Vasquez reported, I'm detecting something unusual. The nerve root seems to be facilitating improved communication between crew members, not telepathy exactly, but enhanced empathy and coordination. Sarah could feel it herself, a subtle awareness of her crew's emotional states and intentions. It was disconcerting but undeniably useful. Any negative side effects? None detected. If anything, crew performance is up across all metrics. 3 days later, they dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Proxima system. What they found there made Sarah's blood run cold. The system was under siege. Massive hegemony ships surrounded Proxima Station, their organic-looking hulls pulsing with predatory life. Smaller vessels darted between them like insects, carrying out some systematic operation that filled the space around the station with debris and escape pods. "Captain," Rodriguez reported, his voice tight with emotion, "I'm detecting massive casualties. The station's shields are failing and the hegemony ships are. They're harvesting the population." ZHTI moved to the sensor station, her lower hands interfacing directly with the nerve root enhanced systems. "My children are here," she announced. "Their genetic signatures are strong but confined. They're being held on the largest vessel, what appears to be a mobile processing facility." Sarah stared at the tactical display. The hegemony fleet numbered at least 30 vessels, ranging from small raiders to massive dreadnoughts. The Prometheus was powerful, but not powerful enough to fight those odds directly. "Mr. Morrison, tactical options." The security chief studied the display grimly. "Captain, direct confrontation would be suicide, but the nerve root enhancements might give us other options, if we could get close enough to the processing ship." "The station," Rodriguez interrupted suddenly. "Captain, Proxima Station is broadcasting a distress call on emergency frequencies. They're requesting any available assistance." Sarah felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders like lead. Before them lay a choice that would define not just this mission, but possibly the future of human-alien relations. Save the station and risk losing ZHTI's children forever, or focus on the rescue mission and abandon thousands of humans to slavery or worse. "Captain," ZHTI said quietly, her coloring shifting to understanding blues, "you must save your people. My children have waited this long, they can wait longer." But Sarah was already forming a different plan. "No," she said firmly. "We save everyone. Mr. Morrison, I want you to analyze the hegemony formation. Look for weak points, patterns we can exploit. Dr. Vasquez, can the nerve root help us communicate with other ships in the system?" "Potentially, yes. The biological components seem to enhance all forms of information transfer." "Good, Rodriguez, open a channel to any human vessels in the system. It's time to coordinate a defense." As the crew scrambled to implement her orders, Sarah found herself remembering her conversation with ZHTI about hope and impossible odds. Sometimes, she reflected, the only way forward was to attempt the impossible and trust that courage and determination would be enough. The real battle was about to begin. The tactical situation was desperate. Sarah studied the holographic display showing 30 hegemony vessels arranged in a complex formation around Proxima Station. The alien ships pulsed with organic light patterns that suggested they were communicating through some form of biological network. "Captain," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, "I've established contact with 7 human vessels in the system. 3 cargo freighters, 2 civilian transports, a mining ship, and—" He paused, checking his display, the UES Defiant, a patrol corvette. Sarah felt a spark of hope. The Defiant wasn't much compared to the Hegemony fleet, but it was a proper warship with experienced crew. "Put me through to the Defiant's captain." The main screen flickered to life, showing a weathered face with steel-gray eyes and commander's stripes. "This is Captain Marcus Webb of the UES Defiant. Who am I talking to?" "Captain Sarah Chen, UES Prometheus. We need to coordinate our response to this attack." Webb's expression was grim. "Captain, I've got orders to evacuate civilian personnel and fall back to Earth space. We can't fight this many ships." "Captain Webb," Sarah said carefully, "we have intelligence about hegemony operations and capabilities that changes the tactical picture. Can you give me 15 minutes? Over the next quarter hour, Sarah explained their mission, ZHTI's presence aboard the Prometheus, and the nerve root enhancements that had transformed their capabilities. Webb listened without interruption, his expression shifting from skepticism to amazement. "Let me get this straight," Webb said finally. "You have an alien refugee whose children were kidnapped by these slavers. You've modified your ship with biotechnology that gives you advantages against hegemony forces, and you want to mount a rescue operation in the middle of a battle zone." "That's correct." Webb was quiet for a long moment. Captain Chen, I've been fighting pirates and raiders for 20 years. What I'm seeing here isn't just an attack, it's systematic extermination. They're not just taking prisoners, they're harvesting genetic material from the entire population. Sarah felt her stomach clench. How many casualties? Preliminary estimates suggest 40,000 dead or captured out of 60,000 station residents. The civilian ships that escaped are carrying the lucky ones. ZHTI moved to the communications station, her coloring shifting to urgent reds and oranges. Captain Chen, may I speak to the other human vessel? Sarah nodded and Webb's eyes widened as ZHTI's imposing form filled his screen. Captain Webb, the alien said in her musical voice, my name is ZHTI. I am the last of my species, and the hegemony has taken my children. But more importantly, they are using your people as test subjects for biological weapons. Webb leaned forward. Explain. The hegemony's goal is not just slavery, it is conquest. They are testing human genetic compatibility with their bioweapons. Your station was chosen specifically because it contained families with children of various ages. They are learning how to target human biology at the genetic level. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. They're developing biological weapons designed specifically for humans. Yes, ZHTI confirmed. Once they perfect their methods, they will move against your Earth colonies systematically. What happens here today will determine whether humanity survives the next decade. Webb's face had gone pale. How do you know this? Because they did the same to my species. We were once a galaxy-spanning civilization. The hegemony reduced us to one survivor in less than 50 years. The communication channel was silent except for the background hum of ship systems. Finally, Webb spoke. What's your plan, Captain Chen? Sarah had been thinking furiously while ZHTI spoke. The nerve root enhancements gave them capabilities the hegemony wouldn't expect, but they still needed to think strategically. We divide their attention. The Defiant leads the civilian ships in what appears to be a desperate evacuation attempt. Meanwhile, the Prometheus uses its enhanced stealth capabilities to infiltrate their formation. Stealth capabilities? Webb asked. Dr. Vasquez answered from off-screen. The nerve root integration allows our ship to mimic biological energy signatures. To their sensors will appear to be a damaged hegemony vessel. The processing ship holding my children is in the center of their formation, ZHTI added. But there are weaknesses in their biotechnology. If we can get close enough, we can disrupt their systems without harming the prisoners. Webb studied his tactical display. It's insane, but staying here and fighting conventionally is suicide. He paused. Captain Chen, the Defiant will create your distraction, but will need more than 15 minutes. How long do you need? Give us 30 minutes to coordinate with the civilian ships and make our move look convincing. Then we'll hit their outer perimeter with everything we have. As they finalized their plans, Sarah felt the weight of command more heavily than ever before. She was committing her crew to an operation that could fail catastrophically, but the alternative was accepting genocide. All stations prepare for silent running, she announced shipwide. We're going into the belly of the beast. Chief Patterson's voice crackled over the intercom. Captain, the nerve root is responding to our tactical needs. Ship systems are automatically configuring for maximum stealth and infiltration capability. ZHTI moved to the center of the bridge, placing her 4 hands on contact panels that the nerve root had grown specifically for her use. I am linking with your ship's consciousness, she explained. This will allow me to guide our approach and identify my children's exact location. Sarah watched in fascination as ZHTI's coloring shifted to deep, meditative blues. The bridge lighting adjusted automatically, and suddenly Sarah could feel something she'd never experienced before, a sense of the ship itself as a living entity. Captain, Dr. Vasquez whispered, the integration is complete. We're not just using alien technology anymore, we've become something new. On the main screen, the hegemony fleet appeared deceptively calm. The organic ships pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that Sarah now understood were communications between the various vessels. Thanks to ZHTI's knowledge and the nerve root's capabilities, those patterns were becoming readable. They're reporting successful genetic harvesting from the station's population, Rodriguez translated. The processing ship is preparing to move to the next phase of operations. Which is, Sarah asked. ZH-Tai's voice was strained with the effort of maintaining her link with the ship. They will begin systematic testing of biological weapons on the captured humans. My children will be used as genetic templates to create more effective delivery systems. The tactical display showed the Defiant and its escort of civilian ships beginning their approach to the hegemony perimeter. Webb was playing his part perfectly, broadcasting desperate requests for mercy while his ships moved in apparently panicked formation. Hegemony forces are responding to the distraction, Morrison reported. 6 vessels breaking formation to intercept the human ships. Sarah nodded. Begin our approach, use the chaos to mask our movement. The Prometheus slipped through space like a ghost. The nerve root enhanced stealth systems made them appear to be just another piece of debris from the battle. As they moved deeper into the hegemony formation, Sarah could see the enemy ships up close for the first time. They were beautiful and terrible organic curves blended seamlessly with mechanical components, creating vessels that seemed more grown than built. Weapon ports opened and closed like flowers, and the hulls themselves seemed to breathe. Target acquired, ZH-Tai announced suddenly. The processing ship is directly ahead. My children are in the biostorage bay, Section 7. Sarah could see it now, a massive vessel nearly 2 kilometers long, its hull covered in sensory organs and manipulation tendrils. Smaller ships attached to its sides like parasites, feeding data and resources to the central processing facility. Captain, Morrison said quietly, I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the ship. They're preparing for something big. On the tactical display, Sarah could see the truth of their situation. The Defiant was fighting valiantly, but it was outnumbered 6-1. The civilian ships were being systematically captured or destroyed. They had minutes before the distraction failed completely. Dr. Vasquez, can we disable the processing ship without harming the prisoners? The nerve root has identified the ship's biological control systems. If we can deliver a targeted electromagnetic pulse at the right frequency, we can shut down their biotechnology while leaving the mechanical life support systems intact. Do it. The Prometheus moved closer to the massive processing ship, still hidden by its stealth systems. Sarah could see the organic corridors through which her enemy's crew moved beings from a dozen different species, all modified by hegemony biotechnology into specialized functions. Firing, Morrison announced. The pulse erupted from the Prometheus in a cone of disruption that washed over the processing ship like invisible fire. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The organic components began to shut down in sequence, bioluminescent patterns fading as the ship's hybrid systems failed. But the mechanical systems remained online, maintaining life support for the thousands of prisoners held within. Direct hit, Morrison reported. The processing ship is dead in space. ZH-Tai, can you locate your children now? The alien's form was completely still except for the rapid color changes that indicated intense concentration. Yes, they are alive and unharmed, but Captain, we have triggered their security protocols. The other ships are converging on our position. Sarah watched the tactical display as hegemony vessels abandoned their pursuit of the Defiant and turned toward the disabled processing ship. They had perhaps 5 minutes before the enemy fleet surrounded them completely. All stations prepare for emergency extraction. Mr. Patterson, how quickly can we get a boarding party to that ship? With the nerve root enhancements, I can extend docking tubes directly through their hull. But Captain, once we're connected, we'll be trapped until the operation is complete. Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew. They had volunteered for a rescue mission, but now they were facing something much larger. The future of human-alien relations, possibly the survival of both species, hung in the balance. Dr. Vasquez, you're with me. Morrison, you have the bridge. If we're not back in 20 minutes, get the ship out of here. Captain, I should lead the boarding party, Morrison protested. No, this isn't just a tactical operation anymore. We're making first contact with potentially dozens of alien species being held as prisoners. We need a xenobiologist, not just security. ZH-Tai rose from her position at the nerve root interface. I will guide you to my children, but be warned, the hegemony uses biological guardians to protect their most valuable assets. The processing ship will not be defenseless, even disabled. As they prepared for the most dangerous mission of their lives, Sarah felt the ship's consciousness through her connection to the nerve root network. The Prometheus had become something unprecedented, a fusion of human determination and alien wisdom, technological capability and biological innovation. Whatever they faced on that processing ship, they would face it as representatives of a new kind of cooperation between species. The children they were trying to save, both human and alien, deserved nothing less than everything they could give. The boarding tubes extended like living tendrils toward the enemy vessel, and Sarah Chen prepared to step into the unknown. The boarding tube sealed against the hegemony processing ship's hull with a sound like living tissue meeting living tissue. Sarah Chen checked her equipment one final time: pulse rifle, emergency medical kit, and the bioscanner Dr. Vasquez had modified with nerve root technology. Behind her, ZH-Tai's massive form barely fit through the docking tube, her four arms carrying devices that pulsed with alien energy. Atmosphere is breathable but heavily contaminated with biological agents, Dr. Vasquez reported through her mask. The nerve root filters are working, but we should limit our exposure time. The airlock cycled open, revealing a corridor that defied human understanding. The walls were a fusion of metal and flesh, pulsing with veins that carried nutrients and information throughout the ship. Bioluminescent panels provided dim lighting, creating shadows that seemed to move independently. "My children are 3 levels down, Section 7, ZH-Tai said, her coloring shifting to determined golds. But the path will not be simple. The ship's biological defenses will have adapted to our intrusion." They moved carefully through the organic corridors. Sarah had expected alien architecture, but this was something far stranger, a ship that had been grown as much as built, with passages that curved and branched like arteries. The walls themselves seemed aware of their presence, contracting slightly as they passed. "Captain," Dr. Vasquez whispered, "I'm detecting massive genetic diversity throughout this ship. There are representatives from dozens of species here." As if summoned by her words, they heard sounds ahead, voices speaking in languages neither human nor resembling ZH-Tai's musical tones. Turning a corner, they entered a vast holding area filled with enclosures of various sizes and configurations. Sarah's heart sank as she saw the scope of the hegemony's operation. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy were held in biopods that kept them sedated but alive. She could see humans from Proxima Station, but also creatures she couldn't even begin to identify, some crystalline, others gaseous, still others that seemed to exist partially in dimensions she couldn't perceive. "By all the stars," ZH-Tai breathed, her coloring cycling through shocked purples and oranges. "This is not just imprisonment, it is systematic collection. They are gathering genetic material from every sapient species they encounter." Dr. Vasquez was scanning frantically with her modified equipment. "Captain, the biosignatures here? Some of these species are completely unknown to human science. And the humans, they've been subjected to genetic sampling procedures. The hegemony is mapping human DNA at the molecular level." A new sound echoed through the chamber, a wet sliding noise that made Sarah's skin crawl. From the shadows between the biopods, shapes began to emerge. The creatures were clearly artificial, bred or modified for a specific purpose. They moved on dozens of tentacles, their bodies covered in sensory organs that tracked the intruders with predatory interest. "Biological guardians," ZH-Tai identified. "They are designed to protect the collection while the main systems are offline." The creatures were approaching slowly, testing the air with chemical sensors. Sarah raised her pulse rifle, but ZH-Tai placed one of her hands on the weapon. "Traditional weapons will not work effectively," she explained, "but observe." ZH-Tai extended her lower arms toward the approaching guardians. Her scales began to shimmer with patterns of light that seemed to hypnotize the creatures. They stopped advancing, their sensory organs tracking the light patterns with confusion. "My people developed these techniques over millennia of dealing with biological threats," she explained while maintaining the light display. "But this will not hold them for long." Dr. Vasquez was studying her scanner with growing excitement. "Captain, I think I understand how this ship works. It's not just a vessel, it's a massive biological computer. The prisoners aren't just being held, they're being integrated into a living database." The implications were staggering. "You mean the ship itself is learning from them?" "More than learning. It's creating a comprehensive map of galactic biology. Every species they've captured contributes to their understanding of how to manipulate life itself. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. They're not just planning to attack individual species, they're planning to control evolution itself. ZHTI's light patterns were becoming strained, and the Guardians were beginning to advance again despite her efforts. We must reach my children quickly. The biological defenses are adapting to my countermeasures. They moved deeper into the ship, passing through chambers that became increasingly alien. The technology here was so advanced it seemed like magic walls that could become transparent or opaque at will, gravity that shifted direction based on need, and everywhere the sense that the ship itself was watching them. 2 more levels, ZHTI announced, but her coloring was showing signs of strain. Maintaining her defensive light patterns while navigating the organic maze was taking its toll. They found a transport tube that resembled a living esophagus more than a mechanical system. As they descended, Sarah could see through the translucent walls to other sections of the ship. The scale of the operation was breathtaking and horrifying, thousands upon thousands of prisoners from hundreds of different species, all being systematically cataloged and studied. "Captain," Dr. Vasquez said suddenly, "I'm detecting something unusual about the human prisoners. The hegemony isn't just studying them, it's modifying them." "What kind of modifications?" "Genetic markers that would make them more susceptible to biological control. They're trying to create a slave population that's literally bred for compliance." The transport tube opened onto a level that was different from the others. Here, the organic technology was more refined, almost beautiful in its alien complexity. Bioluminescent patterns flowed across the walls like living art, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with energy. "We are close," ZHTI announced. "My children are just ahead, but something is wrong." They entered a chamber that took Sarah's breath away. Dozens of translucent containers lined the walls, each containing what appeared to be a large, pearl-like egg. The containers pulsed with soft light, and Sarah could see movement within some of the eggs. "My children," ZHTI whispered, her coloring shifting to overwhelming joy mixed with desperate concern. "They are alive, but they have been changed." Dr. Vasquez approached one of the containers with her scanner. "The genetic patterns are still consistent with ZHTI's species, but there are additional components. The hegemony has been introducing foreign genetic material." "What kind of material?" Sarah asked, though she dreaded the answer. "Human DNA. They're creating hybrid organisms, beings that carry traits from both species." ZHTI's coloring went through a rapid cycle of emotions: rage, grief, protective fury. "They have violated my children before they were even born, but they are still mine, and I will not abandon them." Sarah understood the full scope of what they were facing now. The hegemony wasn't just capturing species for slavery. They were creating new forms of life designed for specific purposes. The hybrid children would carry the best traits of both human and ZHTI genetics, making them incredibly valuable for whatever purposes the hegemony had in mind. "How do we safely extract them?" she asked Dr. Vasquez. "The containers are maintaining precise environmental conditions. Moving them improperly could kill the developing children. But," she studied her scanner more carefully, "the nerve root technology might be able to interface with these systems directly." ZHTI moved to the nearest container and placed her hands on its surface. Immediately, the organic technology began to respond to her presence. Light patterns flowed between her scales and the container's walls, and Sarah could see the egg inside pulse in response. "They recognize me," ZHTI said with wonder. "Even changed as they are, they know their mother." But their reunion was interrupted by a sound that made the chamber walls vibrate. The ship's biological defenses were converging on their location. Through the translucent passages, Sarah could see dozens of Guardians approaching, along with something else, hegemony crew members in biomechanical armor. "We're about to have company," Sarah announced, checking her weapon. Dr. Vasquez was working frantically to understand the container systems. "I think I can interface with the extraction protocols, but I need time." "Captain Chen," a new voice spoke from speakers grown into the walls. The tone was cultured, almost pleasant, but carried undertones that made Sarah's teeth ache. "I am Collector Prime Vashti, administrator of this facility. You have caused considerable disruption to our operations." Sarah looked around for the source of the voice, but saw only the organic walls pulsing with communication patterns. I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Service. You are holding prisoners in violation of galactic law. A sound that might have been laughter echoed through the chamber. Galactic law? My dear primitive, there is no law beyond the strong taking what they require from the weak. Your species shows promise, aggressive enough to be useful, adaptable enough to survive in various environments. We had planned to begin harvesting human genetic material within the next few cycles. You mean enslaving us? Sarah said grimly. Slavery is such an inadequate term. We prefer optimization. Your species will become something greater under our guidance, bred for specific functions, enhanced for maximum utility. The hybrid offspring developing in these containers represent the first step in that process. ZHTI's coloring shifted to pure, incandescent rage. You destroyed my species, and now you seek to destroy another. But you have made an error. You have given these children the strength of both bloodlines. Indeed, Vashti replied. They will serve as excellent templates for future developments. The human capacity for adaptation combined with your species' biological sophistication will produce remarkable results. Sarah felt her own anger rising. The casual way the hegemony spoke of genocide and genetic manipulation as business decisions made her want to destroy everything they had built. But first, she had to save the children. Dr. Vasquez, how much more time do you need? 2 minutes to establish safe extraction protocols. But Captain, there are 43 eggs here. We can't possibly transport them all quickly. ZHTI had been moving from container to container, her hands touching each one briefly. 37 of my original children, she reported, and 6 hybrids. All are viable, all are precious. The sound of approaching guardians was growing louder. Sarah realized they were facing an impossible choice: save some of the children and abandon the rest, or try to save them all and risk losing everyone. But as she watched ZHTI commune with her developing children, Sarah remembered why humans had always been considered dangerous by more established galactic civilizations. They refused to accept impossible choices. Change of plans, she announced. We're not just extracting the children, we're taking the entire section. Sarah's announcement sent shockwaves through the biochamber. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her scanner with wide eyes, while ZHTI's coloring shifted to amazed golds and oranges. Captain, Dr. Vasquez said carefully, are you suggesting we somehow cut an entire section out of this ship? That's exactly what I'm suggesting. Sarah activated her communicator. Morrison, I need you to link the nerve root systems with this ship's biological infrastructure. Can the Prometheus interface directly with hegemony technology? Morrison's voice crackled back through the ship-wide network. Captain, the nerve root is already detecting connection points throughout the processing vessel. It's designed for exactly this kind of integration. Apparently, the hegemony uses biological bridges to transfer cargo between ships. ZHTI moved to a section of wall that seemed more translucent than the others. Captain Chen, your plan may be possible. This ship is designed modularly. Sections can be detached for specialized processing. If we can convince the ship's biological systems that we are authorized hegemony personnel. Can you do that? Sarah asked. Perhaps. My species developed biomimicry techniques over thousands of years. But the risk is enormous. If the ship systems detect the deception, they will activate defensive protocols that could kill all the children instantly. The sound of approaching guardians grew louder, accompanied now by the rhythmic footfalls of armed hegemony crew. Sarah estimated they had perhaps 3 minutes before the chamber would be overrun. Dr. Vasquez, what would happen if we suddenly removed this entire section while the children are still developing? The xenobiologist was studying her scanner displays with fierce concentration. The containers are self-sustaining, but they rely on the ship's bionetwork for nutrients and waste removal. If we could maintain those connections during transfer. The Prometheus has grown interface tendrils throughout the docking area, Morrison reported over the comm. The nerve root is essentially extending our ship's biological systems into theirs. We might be able to maintain life support during extraction. Sarah felt a moment of vertigo as she realized the full scope of what they were attempting. They were going to perform biological surgery on a living spacecraft while under fire from its defensive systems. It was insane, impossible, and completely necessary. ZH-Tai, how do we convince this ship to release this section? The alien moved to what appeared to be a biocontrol interface, a collection of organic conduits that pulsed with information streams. I will need to mimic the biochemical signatures of a high-ranking hegemony administrator. The deception must be perfect at the molecular level. How long will that take? Unknown. My species' biomimicry abilities have never been tested against hegemony technology. The first Guardians appeared at the chamber entrance, twisted creatures that moved with predatory grace on dozens of tentacles. Sarah raised her pulse rifle, knowing that conventional weapons would have limited effect against biological opponents designed to shrug off energy blasts. Dr. Vasquez, can you modify our weapons with nerve root technology? Already working on it, the scientist replied, her hands flying over her scanner controls. The nerve root has identified frequency patterns that should disrupt their biological matrices. Try setting your rifle to pulse frequency 7.3 terahertz. Sarah adjusted her weapon and fired at the nearest Guardian. The effect was dramatic. Instead of absorbing the energy, the creature convulsed and collapsed as its biological systems went into cascade failure. It works, she called, but more Guardians were already pouring into the chamber, followed by hegemony crew in biomechanical armor. The enemy soldiers were a disturbing sight, beings from various species who had been modified with hegemony biotechnology, until they were more machine than organic. Their weapons were grown rather than manufactured, firing projectiles that seemed to seek their targets with predatory intelligence. Sarah ducked behind one of the incubation containers as bioprojectiles splattered against the chamber walls. ZH-Tai, how's that biomimicry coming? I am interfacing with their systems, the alien replied, her voice strained with concentration. But their security protocols are more sophisticated than expected. They are demanding verification codes that I cannot replicate. A bioprojectile struck the wall near Dr. Vasquez, and the scientist yelped as acidic substances began eating through the organic material. Captain, we can't hold this position much longer. Sarah's mind raced. They needed those verification codes, but the only beings who would have them were hegemony administrators. Unless... Morrison, she called through her communicator, can the nerve root access the ship's memory systems? Look for recent administrator communications. Scanning now, Captain. The biological systems maintain extensive records of all interactions. I'm detecting recent communications from someone called Collector Prime Vashti. That's the administrator who spoke to us earlier, Sarah realized. Can you extract his verification codes? The nerve root is interfacing with their data systems now. Captain, this technology is incredible. It's like the ship's memory is an open book once you know how to read it. More hegemony soldiers were entering the chamber, and Sarah's modified pulse rifle was running low on power. She spotted movement near the incubation containers, and her heart stopped. One of the bioprojectiles had damaged a container, and the precious egg inside was beginning to show stress signs. ZH-Tai, one of your children is in danger. The alien's coloring immediately shifted to protective fury. Without breaking her connection to the biocontrol interface, she extended her free arms toward the damaged container. Sarah watched in amazement as ZH-Tai's bioelectric fields began to stabilize the egg's environment directly. I can maintain life support temporarily, ZH-Tai said through gritted teeth, but not while also maintaining the biomimicry deception. I've got Vashti's verification codes, Morrison announced, transmitting them to ZH-Tai now. The alien's body suddenly blazed with complex light patterns as the stolen codes integrated with her biomimicry systems. The chamber's biocontrol interfaces responded immediately, their organic displays shifting from warning reds to acceptance greens. Authorization confirmed, a synthesized voice announced through the ship's biological speakers. Initiating cargo separation protocols for biostorage Section 7. Sarah felt the floor vibrate as massive biological mechanisms activated throughout the ship. The chamber they were in was physically detaching from the rest of the vessel, but the process was taking time they might not have. A new group of hegemony soldiers entered the chamber, these ones in more advanced armor and carrying weapons that pulsed with ominous energy. Sarah recognized the leader immediately, Collector Prime Vashti himself, his biomechanical modifications making him barely recognizable as once having been an organic being. "Clever primitives," Vashti said, his voice a harmonious blend of multiple species vocal patterns. "But you cannot escape with our genetic treasures. Those hybrid offspring represent years of careful development." "They represent children who deserve to live free," Sarah replied, continuing to fire at the advancing guardians. "Freedom is an illusion," Vashti responded. "Under our guidance, these hybrids will become something greater than either parent species could achieve alone. They will be the first of a new order, beings bred for perfection, designed for specific functions, optimized for maximum utility." Dr. Vasquez suddenly looked up from her scanner with an expression of horror. "Captain, I'm detecting massive biological activity throughout the ship. The hegemony isn't just trying to stop us. They're preparing to harvest all the prisoners simultaneously." "What does that mean?" Sarah asked, though she feared she already knew. "They're going to kill everyone aboard this ship to prevent us from freeing them. Thousands of beings from dozens of species are about to die." Sarah felt the weight of command crushing down on her. They were so close to saving ZHTI's children, but success would mean abandoning thousands of other prisoners to death. "Morrison, what's our status on the section separation?" 40% complete, Captain. The biological connections are more complex than expected." "How long until the hegemony can begin their harvesting process?" Dr. Vasquez's scans suggest they need another 8 minutes to prepare their systems. Sarah looked around the chamber at the developing children, at ZHTI straining to maintain multiple biological functions simultaneously, at Dr. Vasquez fighting to understand alien technology under combat conditions. They were so close to achieving the impossible. "Change of plans," she announced. "We're not just saving the children, we're freeing all the prisoners." Vashti's biomechanical features shifted into what might have been amusement. "Impossible. You lack the resources, the knowledge, and the time." "Maybe," Sarah admitted, "but we have something you don't understand, the willingness to try anyway." She activated her communicator to address her entire crew. "All stations, prepare for the most ambitious rescue operation in human history. We're about to attempt something that violates every regulation, exceeds our capabilities, and will probably get us all killed. Any objections?" The response came back immediately from every member of her crew, not in words, but in the coordinated activity that spoke of complete commitment to their impossible mission. Through the nerve root network, Sarah could feel her ship's consciousness expanding as it interfaced more deeply with the hegemony vessel. The Prometheus was learning, adapting, becoming something unprecedented. A fusion of human determination and alien wisdom that was about to attempt the liberation of thousands of beings from across the galaxy. ZHTI looked up from her biocontrol interface, her coloring shifting to the deepest gold Sarah had ever seen. "Captain Chen, in my language, there is a phrase, Zethara Naktal. It means to attempt the salvation of all, knowing that failure means the loss of everything precious." "What do you call someone who makes that attempt?" Sarah asked. "Hero," ZHTI replied simply. As hegemony forces closed in around them and the countdown to mass execution continued, Sarah Chen and her crew prepared to discover whether heroism was enough to overcome impossible odds. In the chambers around them, thousands of beings from across the galaxy waited unknowingly for salvation or destruction. The final battle for the future of galactic civilization was about to begin, fought not with massive fleets or planetary weapons, but with courage, determination, and the radical idea that every life, human or alien, had value worth defending. The outcome would determine not just the fate of ZHTI's children, but whether the galaxy would belong to those who saw other beings as resources to be exploited, or to those who recognized them as fellow travelers deserving of freedom and dignity. In the end, it would come down to a simple question: was love stronger than fear, hope more powerful than despair? Sarah Chen and the crew of the Prometheus were about to provide the universe with an answer.